There is a reason this video is still playing right now. There is a reason your finger did not swipe, your thumb did not scroll, and something deep inside you said, wait. Not yet. Stay. That was not the algorithm. That was not coincidence. That was a signal, a frequency older than time, older than your name, older than the breath in your lungs right now. Heaven has pressed pause on everything around you to deliver something directly into your spirit. And if you have ever felt like you were made for more than what your current life is showing you, then what is about to be spoken over you in the next few minutes was written specifically for you before you were born. You are not like the rest. You never were. Even when you tried to fit in, even when you shrunk yourself down to match the room, even when you smiled through the confusion of why your life felt heavier than everyone else's, something inside you always knew. There was always a whisper beneath the noise that said, this is not all there is. There is something greater. There is something more. And that whisper was not your ego. It was not wishful thinking. It was the voice of the one who formed you, reminding you that you were never designed to be ordinary. Chosen ones carry a different kind of weight. They feel things more deeply. They see things others miss. They sense shifts in the atmosphere before anyone else notices the wind has changed. If you have ever been told you are too sensitive, too intense, too much, understand that those words were spoken by people who could not comprehend the magnitude of what is living inside you. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It is a feature. It is the antenna you were given so that heaven could communicate with you in frequencies that the average person simply cannot receive. Think about the life you have lived up until this moment. Think about the nights that felt endless, the prayers that seemed to disappear into silence, the plans that collapsed, the relationships that walked away, the versions of yourself you had to bury before you could arrive at this exact seat, in this exact moment, hearing these exact words. Every single one of those experiences was not punishment. Every single one was preparation. You were not being broken, you were being built. And the blueprint for what you are becoming has always been in the hands of the one who chose you before the foundation of this world was ever laid. There are people who go their entire lives never hearing what you are hearing right now. They move through their days on the surface, comfortable, unbothered, untouched by the deeper call. And there is nothing wrong with those people. But you are not those people. You are sitting here right now because your soul recognized a signal. Your spirit leaned in. Something in you said, this is for me, and it was right. It is for you. This moment is for you. This message is for you. And the fact that you are still here, still listening, still breathing in these words, tells me everything about the kind of person you are. You are someone who has not given up, even when giving up would have been easier. Even when the weight of everything pressing down on you made the floor feel like the only safe place to rest. Even in the middle of your most private storms, you kept going. You kept waking up. You kept showing up. And heaven has seen every single step. Not one tear has been forgotten. Not one sleepless night has gone unnoticed. The record of your faithfulness in the dark has been kept, and the reward for that faithfulness is not behind you. It is in front of you. It is closer now than it has ever been before. You were chosen before you understood what being chosen meant. You were set apart before you knew what it cost to be different. And the reason this video found you today, the reason these words are landing in your chest like something that has been waiting a long time to arrive, is because the appointed season of your elevation has begun. Not next year, not when everything is perfect, not after you have fixed every broken thing about yourself. Now, in this very season, in this very imperfect, complicated, sometimes painful chapter of your life, The activation is happening. There are people watching this right now who are in the middle of the hardest thing they have ever faced. There are people who came to this video carrying a weight they have not told anyone about. There are people who have been faithful in secret for years without a single visible sign that anything is changing. If that is you, I need you to hear this clearly. The silence you have been enduring is not evidence that God has forgotten you. It is evidence that what is being prepared for you requires a level of foundation that cannot be rushed. The deeper the purpose, the longer the preparation. And your preparation has been longer than most because your purpose is greater than most. Right now, if you are willing to acknowledge that something greater than yourself has brought you to this moment, I want you to do one thing. Type the number 77 in the comments below. 77 is not just a number, it is a declaration. It is your way of saying, I am here, I am present, I am ready to receive what was always meant for me. When you type it, you are not just leaving a comment, you are marking yourself. You are planting a flag in the ground of this moment and saying, I was here when heaven spoke, and I chose to respond. Because the chosen ones respond. That is what separates the ones who step into their destiny from the ones who almost did. It is the response. It is the yes in the face of uncertainty. It is the step taken before the full picture becomes clear. Faith does not wait for perfect conditions. Faith moves in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the confusion, in the middle of the season, when nothing looks the way you thought it would. And you, chosen one, you have always been a mover, even when you did not feel like it. Even when the movement was slow, you moved. The road that brought you here has not been easy, and I am not going to insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. You have walked through fire. You have survived things that would have permanently destroyed someone else. You have come out on the other side of seasons so brutal that you barely recognized yourself when you looked in the mirror. But here you are, still standing, still breathing, still receiving, and that right there is not luck. That is the hand of the one who promised. He would never leave you, never forsake you, working in and through every single chapter of your story without exception. You carry something that this world desperately needs right now. Not in spite of everything you have been through, but because of it. The cracks in you are not weakness. They are where the light gets in and where the light gets out. The people who will one day be transformed by your life, by your story, by the frequency you carry, they are waiting. They have been waiting. And every step you take toward becoming who you were always meant to be is a step toward the moment when your life becomes the message that sets them free. This is not a video. This is a visitation. And the one who arranged it knows your name, knows your need, knows the exact combination of words that needed to reach you today. You did not find this. This found you. And now that it has, the question before you is the same question that has always been before the chosen ones throughout history. Will you receive it? Will you let it land? Will you allow what heaven is doing in this moment to go all the way down into the roots of who you are, so that what grows from this day forward cannot be shaken, cannot be moved, cannot be taken from you by any force in this world or the next? The answer is already inside you. You already know what it is. And deep in the marrow of your bones, something ancient and holy is beginning, right now, to stir. There is a young king standing at the edge of something he was never fully prepared for. He has just inherited a throne that his father spent decades building, a kingdom so vast and so complex that the weight of it alone would have crushed most men before they ever sat down in the seat. The people are watching him. The neighboring nations are watching him. And if you look closely at the expression on his face in that moment, you will not see arrogance. You will not see the confident swagger of someone who believes he has all the answers. What you will see is something far more honest than that. You will see a young man who knows, with every fiber of his being, that what is being asked of him is greater than what he currently carries. His name is Solomon, and the night that changed everything for him did not happen in a throne room. It did not happen in a great public ceremony surrounded by thousands of witnesses. It happened in a place called Gibeon, in the quiet, in the dark, in that sacred space between sleeping and waking, where heaven sometimes finds it easiest to reach the ones it has chosen. God appeared to Solomon in a dream and said something that must have stopped his breath entirely. Ask for whatever you want me to give you. No conditions attached, no ceiling named, no category of request ruled out in advance. The creator of the universe looked at this young man standing at the threshold of his destiny and said, "Name it, whatever you need, it is yours." And here is what I need you to sit with for a moment, because this is the part of the story that most people rush past without fully absorbing. Solomon could have asked for anything. He could have asked for the defeat of his enemies. He could have asked for wealth so staggering that no nation on earth could ever challenge him. He could have asked for long life, for fame, for military power, for the kind of visible, measurable, impressive success that would have made every doubter in his life go permanently silent. Any of those requests would have been entirely understandable. Any of those requests would have been the natural response of a human being standing in front of an open door with no limits posted on it. But Solomon did not ask for any of those things. What Solomon asked for was the ability to perceive. He asked for a hearing heart, a mind capable of discernment, the kind of wisdom that would allow him to look at a situation and see what others could not see, to hear what others could not hear, to know what no amount of study or strategy or human intelligence could ever fully produce on its own. He asked for the one thing that, in his spirit, he understood to be the root from which everything else would grow. Not the fruit, the root, not the visible outcome, the internal capacity that makes every good outcome possible. And heaven was so moved by that request, so deeply pleased by the fact that this young king understood the difference between asking for things and asking for the source of all things, that God gave him not only what he asked for, but everything he did not ask for as well. The wealth came, the fame came, the influence came, the victories came. All of it came, not because Solomon chased it, but because he went after the one thing that made him capable of stewarding all of it. He went after the frequency. He went after the internal upgrade. He went after the wisdom that does not come from books or experience or the school of human effort, but descends from above like rain on dry ground, soaking into the roots of a person and producing fruit that no natural explanation can account for. Now turn that mirror toward yourself for a moment. Because the reason this story is alive in this message right now, the reason Solomon's night in Gibeon is being spoken over your life in this exact season, is not coincidental. You have been in your own version of Gibeon. You have had your own quiet nights, your own sacred spaces between sleeping and waking, where something inside you reached upward towards something you could not fully name but could not stop wanting. You have had moments of longing that went beyond the desire for money or success or comfort. Moments where what you were really reaching for was clarity, understanding. The kind of knowing that settles something deep inside you and makes the path forward suddenly visible in a way it was not before. That longing was not weakness. That longing was not confusion. That longing was the signature of a chosen one, recognizing the gap between where they are and what they were made to carry, and reaching toward the source that can close that gap. Solomon recognized that gap on the night of his greatest opportunity, and instead of filling it with things, he asked heaven to fill it with something that things could never replace. And heaven answered him with a generosity so extravagant that the entire ancient world eventually traveled from distant lands just to sit in a room with him and hear him speak, not because of his crown, because of his frequency. The Queen of Sheba did not make that long, exhausting journey because she heard Solomon was rich. She came because she heard there was something in this man that defied explanation. There was something in the way he saw the world, the way he processed problems, the way he answered questions that had stumped every other mind she had consulted, that made her willing to cross deserts and mountains to be in his presence for a few hours. And when she arrived and sat with him and heard him speak, the scripture says that there was no more spirit in her, not because he frightened her, because she encountered something in him that was so far beyond ordinary human intelligence that it recalibrated her entire understanding of what a human mind was capable of producing when heaven had been given full access to it. That is the kind of chosen one you are being called to become. Not someone who simply accumulates knowledge, but someone who carries a frequency of understanding so elevated, so distinct, so clearly not manufactured by human effort alone, that people in your life will begin to notice that there is something different about the way you see things. They will come to you with problems they cannot solve. They will sit across from you in conversations and walk away feeling like something shifted. They will not always be able to explain why. They will just know that being in your presence does something to them that they do not experience anywhere else. Because the wisdom that heaven deposits is not just for the one who carries it. It is designed to flow outward, to touch every life that comes into contact with the one who received it. The scripture says it with a clarity that should land in your spirit, like an anchor being dropped into deep water. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James chapter 1. That promise was not written for people who already have everything figured out. It was written for people standing exactly where you are standing right now, at the threshold of something larger than themselves, aware of the gap between their current capacity and the assignment they sense is coming, honest enough to admit that what they need cannot be generated from within themselves alone. That honesty is not a disqualifier. That honesty is the beginning of the prayer that changes everything. Solomon's prayer at Gibeon was essentially an act of the most profound honesty a human being can practice before God. He said, "I do not have what this requires." And heaven said, "Then let me give it to you." You have been in seasons that required more than you felt you had. You have stood in front of challenges that made you aware, in the most visceral way possible, of the gap between your resources and your responsibilities. And instead of running from that gap, instead of pretending it did not exist, you stayed. You kept showing up. You kept reaching. And that reaching, that consistent, stubborn, faith-fueled reaching towards something greater than yourself, has not gone unnoticed by the one who watched Solomon kneel in Gibeon all those centuries ago. The same God who answered that young king's prayer in the dark is the same God whose presence is filling this moment right now. And the wisdom that descended on Solomon like a river, breaking through a dam, is the same wisdom that is available to you. In this season, in this chapter, in this specific and sacred period of your life, where everything you have been through has brought you to a place of genuine readiness, not perfect readiness, not comfortable readiness, but the kind of readiness that comes from having been emptied of everything you thought you needed and finding yourself standing before heaven with open hands, saying, "I am ready to receive what you always intended for me to carry." That is exactly where you are right now, and that is exactly where the story begins to turn. Stay with what is rising in you right now, because what you are feeling in this moment is not random emotion. It is recognition. It is the part of you that has always known you were carrying something significant, finally finding language for what it has sensed all along. And as that recognition settles into your spirit, I need to take you deeper into Solomon's story, because there is a dimension of his journey that most people never talk about, and it is the dimension that will explain something about your life that you may have been struggling to make sense of for a very long time. When Solomon's wisdom became known, when the reports of his understanding began to spread beyond the borders of Israel and into the surrounding nations, something else happened alongside the celebration and the admiration. Something darker, something that does not get mentioned in the highlight reel of his story, but was absolutely present in the reality of his daily existence. Opposition arose. Not the kind of opposition that comes from enemies who are simply hostile by nature, but the more specific, more targeted, more personal kind of opposition that only comes when something about your gifting threatens the existing order of things. When your light is bright enough to expose what others would prefer to keep in the shadows, you do not just attract admirers. You attract resistance. And if you have ever wondered why your road has been harder than the roads of people around you who seem to carry far less, if you have ever lain awake asking why someone with your level of faith, your level of dedication, your level of genuine desire to do what is right, keeps encountering obstacles that seem disproportionate to anything you have actually done wrong, then I need you to hear this clearly. The resistance in your life is not evidence of God's absence. It is evidence of your assignment's significance. The enemy does not waste resources attacking empty fields. He does not deploy his most sophisticated strategies against lives that carry no real threat to his agenda. The intensity of the opposition you have faced is a direct reflection of the magnitude of what heaven placed inside you. Solomon understood this in ways that most of his contemporaries could not comprehend. From the very beginning of his reign, there were forces working against the establishment of everything he was called to build. Adversaries rose up from unexpected places. People who had been loyal to his father turned against him. Political conspiracies formed in the shadows of the very kingdom he was trying to serve. And the more his wisdom grew, the more his influence expanded, the more elaborate the attempts to undermine him became. Because wisdom at that level is not just personally valuable, it is cosmically threatening to everything that operates in darkness, confusion, and deception. A mind that can see clearly, that can perceive what is really happening beneath the surface of situations, that can discern truth from the most sophisticated lies, is the most dangerous thing in the world to a system that survives on keeping people confused, distracted, and disconnected from their own God. Given capacity to understand, think about your own life through that lens for a moment. Think about the specific nature of the attacks that have come against you. Have you noticed that they tend to cluster around your gifts? Have you noticed that the areas where you have faced the most resistance are often the very areas where you carry the most potential? The relationships that fell apart, did they tend to involve people who were threatened by your growth rather than inspired by it? The opportunities that collapsed, did they tend to collapse at precisely the moment when you were on the verge of stepping into something that would have significantly elevated your capacity to impact others? The timing of those collapses was not coincidental. The specificity of those attacks was not random. You were targeted because you were identified. And you were identified because what you carry is real. Solomon faced a particular kind of warfare that was designed not to destroy him outright, but to distract him gradually. The enemy understood that a direct assault on someone carrying that level of divine wisdom would be obviously ineffective. You cannot simply charge at a mind that can see through every obvious strategy. So the approach was more subtle, more patient, more sophisticated. It came through the accumulation of compromise, through the slow erosion of the boundaries that kept him connected to the source of his gifting, through the introduction of influences that did not violently oppose his wisdom, but quietly diluted it over time until the frequency he had received in Gibeon was buried under layers of noise, distraction, and divided loyalty. And here is why that part of his story matters for yours. Because the warfare against chosen ones rarely looks like warfare. It rarely announces itself. It rarely comes in the form of something obviously destructive that any reasonable person would recognize and refuse. It comes dressed in the language of opportunity, of pleasure, of reasonable compromise, of just this once, of everyone else is doing it, of you have earned this, of one small exception will not hurt anything. It comes in the form of the slow drift that begins so gradually that you are already far from the shore before you realize the current has been pulling you in a direction you never consciously chose to go. You have felt that pull. And you are still here, which means you have been fighting it, even imperfectly, even inconsistently. Even in the seasons when you lost more ground than you gained, you were still in the fight, which means the anointing on your life has never fully released its grip on you. Because that is what genuine calling does. It does not let go. It may get quieter in the seasons when you drift from it. It may seem almost silent in the chapters when the noise of everything else drowns it out, but it never disappears. It waits. It persists. It keeps sending signals up through the layers of distraction and compromise and confusion saying, I am still here. Come back. Come back to what you were made for. Come back to the frequency you were born carrying. The opposition you have faced has not been able to silence that signal in you. And that fact alone tells you something profound about the nature of what you carry. Because things that can be permanently destroyed by opposition are not things that heaven has permanently established. What God places inside a chosen one is not fragile. It does not shatter under pressure. It does not dissolve in the rain of hard seasons. It bends. It gets tested. It goes through the fire, but it comes out on the other side still intact, still glowing, still carrying the original frequency of the one who placed it there. The scripture speaks to this reality with a directness that should settle something in your spirit right now. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. Isaiah chapter 54. That is not a motivational slogan. That is a covenant declaration. It is the announcement of a reality that operates at a level above and beyond anything the opposition can access. Weapons can be formed. People will form them. Strategies will be devised. Conspiracies will be constructed. Lies will be spoken. Doors will be deliberately shut. And in the natural realm, looking only at the visible evidence, all of that can appear to be working. It can appear to be effective. It can appear to be winning. But at the level where heaven operates, at the level of the established covenant, not one of those weapons is capable of producing its intended result against a life that has been divinely marked. Solomon was not exempt from the attempts. He was not living in a protected bubble where opposition simply could not reach him. The attacks were real. The pressures were real. the erosion happened. But the wisdom that heaven had deposited in him, the original frequency of that night in Gibeon, was never fully extinguished. Even in his seasons of greatest compromise, even in the chapters of his story that are the hardest to read, the thread of what God had placed in him remained, and it remained in you through everything you have been through as well. Every attack that was meant to permanently remove you from your assignment has failed. You are still here. The frequency is still alive, and the opposition that targeted you, far from succeeding in its purpose, has actually served to press the calling deeper into you than it ever could have gone in comfortable conditions. There is something that happens to chosen ones in the pressure seasons that cannot happen any other way. The gifts go from surface level to structural. They stop being things you can access occasionally under the right conditions and become things that are woven into the very foundation of who you are, available in any season, under any pressure, in any circumstance, because they have been tested at depths that most people never reach. That is what your warfare has been producing in you. Not damage, depth, not destruction, foundation. And the foundation that has been laid in you through the fires of opposition is about to become visible in a way that will make everything you went through make sense in an instant. The darkness targeted you because of what you carry, but what you carry cannot be taken by darkness. It can only be temporarily obscured, and the season of obscurity is ending. The frequency is rising, and what was placed inside you at the very beginning, what was confirmed through every trial and every test and every moment of darkness that could not ultimately hold you, is about to come fully into the light in a way that will leave no one who knows your story with any doubt about who has been walking with you all along. Do not let the weight of what was just spoken over you settle into passivity. What rises in a chosen one is not meant to remain still. It is meant to move. It is meant to build. It is meant to cross the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the spiritual reality of who you are and the practical, daily, lived experience of becoming that person fully. And that bridge, that crossing point between what heaven has declared and what your life actually looks like on the ground, is exactly where what I am about to share with you becomes not just interesting but essential. Solomon's wisdom was not abstract. It was not theoretical. It was not a beautiful quality that existed only in the realm of spiritual experience without touching the concrete realities of his kingdom. His decisions, his building projects, his judgments, his relationships, and his legacy. His wisdom operated at every level simultaneously. It was spiritual and practical at the same time. It was divine in its origin and functional in its application. And that integration, that seamless connection between the frequency heaven gave him and the real-world results it produced is the model for what is available to you right now. Here is something that science has begun to understand only in recent decades, something that ancient wisdom has always known. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. Researchers who study the human brain call it gamma. It is a measurable, observable pattern of neural activity that shows up consistently in people who demonstrate extraordinary levels of insight, creativity, problem-solving, and what scientists sometimes call peak cognitive performance. It is the brainwave signature of the eureka moment. It is the electrical pattern of the mind in the instant when something that was previously invisible suddenly becomes perfectly clear. And what is remarkable, what the research reveals with a consistency that is impossible to dismiss, is that this frequency does not appear randomly. It is connected to something deeper, something that looks, to anyone willing to look honestly at the data, remarkably like the activation of a capacity that was always present but waiting for the right conditions to fully emerge. A neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers spent more than 30 years of his professional life studying this phenomenon. Trained at MIT and connected to research programs that included work with NASA, Dr. Rivers dedicated decades to understanding why some human minds seem to operate at a frequency that others simply cannot access, and what, if anything, could be done to bridge that gap. What he discovered after thousands of days of research and analysis was that the barrier between ordinary cognitive function and the kind of elevated mental performance that produces breakthrough results is not fixed. It is not a permanent ceiling. It is a frequency gap, and frequency gaps, by their very nature, can be closed. The specific discovery centered on two brainwave states. The first is theta, operating between 4 and 8 cycles per second, the state associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, intuition, and the kind of meditative awareness that allows a person to access information that their conscious analytical mind would normally filter out. The second is gamma, the higher frequency associated with peak performance, breakthrough insight, and what researchers describe as the moments when the brain is firing at its highest possible level of integration and coherence. What Dr. Rivers found was that these two states, theta and gamma, are the natural operating frequencies of minds that consistently produce results that exceed what conventional effort and intelligence alone can explain. And here is what connects directly to everything you have been hearing today. These are also the frequencies that are most active in people who describe their best moments as feeling guided, feeling connected to something larger than themselves, feeling as though the answer arrived not from their own thinking, but from somewhere beyond it. The tool that Dr. Rivers developed from this research is called the Genius Wave. It is a precisely engineered audio program, approximately 7 minutes in length, that uses a technology called brainwave entrainment to guide your brain into the theta and gamma states that unlock the elevated cognitive function that has always been your inheritance as a chosen one. Brainwave entrainment works through a simple but profound principle. The brain has a natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic, external stimuli. When you are exposed to carefully calibrated audio frequencies, your brain does not passively receive them. It actively matches them. It shifts its own electrical activity to align with the signal it is receiving. And when that signal is precisely engineered to guide you into theta and gamma, the result is not a simulation of elevated mental function. It is the real thing, measurable, repeatable, available to you every single day in just 7 minutes. You do not need to meditate for years to access this. You do not need any special skill or prior experience. You do not need to clear your schedule or find a silent retreat or become someone different from who you already are. You simply listen. 7 minutes every day. And what happens in those 7 minutes is that your brain, the most sophisticated instrument ever created, is gently guided back into the frequency it was always designed to operate at. The frequency that gets buried under stress and noise and the accumulated weight of living in a world that is constantly pulling your attention in 1,000 directions simultaneously. People who have used the Genius Wave describe changes that begin within the first week of consistent use. A woman named Sarah, a single mother working 2 jobs while trying to finish her degree, began using the 7-minute audio every morning before her children woke up. Within 10 days, she told Dr. Rivers that something had shifted in the way she was processing information. Problems that had felt overwhelming were suddenly yielding solutions she had not been able to see before. Her focus during study sessions extended from 20 minutes to over an hour without effort. 3 months later, she had completed her degree, secured a promotion at her primary job, and described feeling, for the first time in years, like her mind was fully available to her. Another user, a man in his late 40s who had spent 2 decades feeling like he was operating at a fraction of his actual capacity, reported that after 30 days of consistent use, he had launched the business he had been postponing for years, closed his first 3 clients within a week of opening, and told Dr. Rivers that the version of himself that had always existed in his imagination had finally shown up in his actual life. These are not isolated stories. They are representative of what happens when a chosen one stops waiting for permission to operate at the frequency they were always designed for, and takes the practical step of removing the interference that has been keeping them from it. Now, I know some of you are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and that thought is completely valid. You have been careful with your resources because you have had to be. You have learned not to spend on things that promise much and deliver little. That instinct has served you, but I want you to consider for a moment what the cost of not accessing your full frequency has actually been. The opportunities not taken because the clarity was not there. The ideas that arrived but could not be developed because the mental bandwidth was not available. The version of your life that has been waiting just on the other side of the gap between where you are and where you were made to be. The Genius Wave is available today for just $39, reduced from its regular price of $49 through the link in the pinned comment below this video. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, not 30 days, 90 days. 3 full months to use it consistently, to experience what it does inside you, and to make a completely informed decision about whether it has delivered on its promise. If it has not, you get every dollar back without question. The risk is not on you. It never should be when something is genuinely worth what it claims to be. One important thing: there are imitation products circulating online that use similar language but do not contain the precise frequency calibration that makes the original effective. Please purchase only through the official link in the pinned comment and the description below this video. That is the only source where you are guaranteed to receive the authentic program developed by Dr. Rivers from his decades of research. This offer at $39 is time limited. The number of activations available at this price is not unlimited, and when they are gone, the price returns to $49. If something in you recognized itself in what you have been hearing today, if the description of theta and gamma frequencies felt less like new information and more like confirmation of something you have always sensed about yourself, then the link in the pinned comment is where you take the next step. Not tomorrow, now, because chosen ones do not wait for perfect conditions to move toward what was always meant for them. And even as those practical steps settle into your awareness, even as the decision about what to do with what you have just heard begins to form in the quiet of your spirit, do not let the momentum of this moment carry you past what is still being built inside you. Because what heaven is doing in you right now is not just about unlocking a tool or accessing a frequency on a Tuesday morning before work. It is about something far more ancient and far more personal than any 7-minute audio program could fully contain on its own. The science confirms what the spirit already knows, but the spirit goes deeper than the science can follow, and it is into that deeper place that this message now needs to take you. Solomon had everything. After Gibeon, after the wisdom descended and the wealth followed and the fame spread to the edges of the known world, there was a season in his life that looked, from the outside, like the complete fulfillment of everything a human being could ever want. The temple was built. The kingdom was established. The treasury was full beyond measure. The throne was secure. And yet, somewhere in the middle of all of that visible abundance, something began to shift in Solomon in a direction that none of his admirers could have predicted, and that Solomon himself may not have fully recognized until he was already deep inside it. The drift did not begin dramatically. That is the thing about the valley seasons of chosen ones. They rarely announce themselves. They rarely begin with a single catastrophic decision that everyone around you can clearly identify as the moment everything changed. They begin with a series of small movements away from the source. A compromise here, a distraction there, a relationship that pulls your attention in a direction that is not aligned with your calling. A comfort that feels harmless at first but gradually becomes a substitute for the deeper nourishment that only comes from staying connected to the frequency you were given. Solomon began accumulating what the world offered him in quantities that eventually became a kind of noise, drowning out the signal that had started everything. And here is what is so deeply important about this part of his story for your life right now. The valley was not the end. The drift was not the verdict. The distance that grew between Solomon and the original frequency of that night in Gibeon was real, and its consequences were real. And the pain of that season in his life was not minimized or pretended away by heaven, but neither was it the final word. Because what God places inside a chosen one cannot be permanently overwritten by the seasons in which that person wanders from it. The wisdom was still there. The calling was still there. The original frequency was still broadcasting beneath all the layers of noise and compromise and accumulated distraction, waiting for the moment when the one who had received it would grow quiet enough to hear it again. You know what that waiting feels like. You have had your own valley seasons. You have had chapters where the clarity that once seemed so accessible became distant and difficult to reach, where the sense of divine purpose that used to feel immediate and real started to feel like a memory of something you once had rather than a present reality you were living in, where the gap between the person you knew yourself to be called to become and the person your daily life was actually reflecting felt so wide that closing it seemed almost theoretical. Those seasons were not evidence that you had been abandoned. They were not proof that the calling had been revoked or the anointing had expired. They were the valley, and the valley, as every chosen one eventually learns, is not the absence of the path. It is a part of the path. The valley does what the mountain cannot do. It produces a quality of hunger in a chosen one that comfort never generates. It creates a thirst for the original frequency that only comes from having been far enough from it to feel the difference in your bones. Solomon, in the later writings attributed to him, wrote with a rawness and an honesty that could only have come from someone who had tasted both heights of divine wisdom and the hollow ache of a life that had drifted from its source. The book of Ecclesiastes is not the writing of a man who has it all together. It is the writing of a man who tried everything the world offered as a substitute for the real thing, and came back from that experiment with a clarity that cut through illusion like a blade. "Vanity of vanities," he wrote. "All is vanity," not as a declaration of hopelessness, but as the conclusion of a man who had done the research and discovered that nothing this world offers can fill the space that was designed to be occupied by something that comes only from above. That conclusion was not defeat. It was return. It was the sound of a chosen one finding their way back to the frequency that was always their home. And the return, when it finally came, carried with it a wisdom that was deeper than the wisdom of Gibeon. Because it was now seasoned, with the full weight of everything Solomon had learned on the road through the valley. The wisdom he had been given as a gift at the beginning of his reign had been tested by everything he subsequently experienced. And what emerged on the other side of that testing was not a lesser version of the original, but a more complete one. A wisdom that could speak not only to the heights of divine blessings, but to the reality of human struggle, human failure, human wandering, and human return. Your valley has been doing the same work in you. Every moment of distance from your original frequency, every season of drift, every chapter of your story that you are least proud of, has been adding layers to the wisdom you carry that could not have been added any other way. The chosen ones who speak most powerfully into the lives of people in pain are not the ones who have never been in pain. They are the ones who went into the depths and came back with a report. They are the ones whose understanding of struggle is not theoretical but lived. They are the ones whose compassion has been expanded by their own experience of need, whose faith has been deepened by their own encounter with doubt, whose wisdom carries the particular gravity that only comes from having been tested and having held. The scripture speaks into this moment with a tenderness that should reach all the way down to the places in you that are still healing from the valley. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Psalm chapter 23. Restores, not replaces, not starts over with a blank slate as if the valley never happened. Restores, which means the original is still there. The original frequency is still present. The original calling is still intact. And the work that heaven is doing in you right now is not the work of creating something new from nothing, but the work of restoring something real that the valley seasons temporarily obscured. The soul that is being restored in you is the soul that was placed in you before the world got to you, before the wounds accumulated, before the drift began, before the noise layered itself over the signal. And the restoration is not gradual in the way that human healing tends to be gradual. When heaven restores, it restores with a speed and a completeness that defies the logic of how long the damage took to accumulate. You have been in the valley. You have felt the distance. You have experienced the hollow ache of a life that was not quite matching the frequency of who you knew yourself to be called to be. But you are not still in the valley. The fact that you are here, the fact that these words are landing in you the way they are landing, the fact that something in your spirit has been quietly rising throughout this entire message, is not the feeling of someone still lost in the low places. It is the feeling of someone who has crested the edge of the valley and is now standing at the beginning of the ascent. The road going up looks different from the road going down. The light is different. The air is different. And the person walking it is different, not diminished by the valley, but enlarged by it in ways that are about to become visible to everyone in your life who has been watching and wondering and waiting to see what you would do with everything you have been through. Solomon came back to his foundation, and in the coming back, he became more than he had been before the drift, because the wisdom that is tested and returns is always greater than the wisdom that was never tested at all. Your return is happening right now. Your restoration is not scheduled for some future date when conditions are better. It is happening in this moment, in this exact breath, in the space between these words and the response rising in your spirit as you receive them. The valley shaped you for the mountain that is coming, and the mountain that is coming is higher than anything you have climbed before. And as that restoration continues to rise in you, as the frequency of who you were always made to be grows clearer and stronger with every passing moment, something else begins to stir alongside it. something that chosen ones always eventually feel when the activation reaches a certain depth. It is not just the awareness of what is being unlocked inside them. It is the awareness of why. The why that goes beyond personal blessing, beyond individual breakthrough, beyond the relief of finally stepping into the fullness of what you carry. It is the awareness that what is rising in you was never designed to stop with you. It was designed to flow. It was designed to reach. It was designed to find its way into the lives of people who are still in the places you have already come through, and carry them forward with the same force that has been carrying you. Solomon built a temple, not for himself. The wisdom he carried, the frequency he had received, the understanding that had been deposited in him in that sacred night at Gibeon, was not given to him so that he could sit in a private room and enjoy the private experience of knowing more than everyone around him. It was given to him so that he could build something that would outlast him, something that would create a dwelling place for the glory that had touched him, so that others could come into that space and encounter the same presence that had transformed him. The temple was not Solomon's monument to his own greatness. It was the physical expression of a man who understood that every gift heaven deposits in a chosen one is ultimately a gift for the community that chosen one is called to serve. Think about that in the context of your own life. The gifts you carry, the wisdom you have accumulated through every valley and every mountain, the frequency that is being restored and amplified in you right now, none of it was given to you for the purpose of private enjoyment. Every ounce of understanding you have gained through suffering was given to you so that you could reach back and help the next person through the same terrain. Every breakthrough you experience this season is a breakthrough that belongs not just to you, but to everyone whose life will be touched by yours in the years that are coming. You are not just a recipient of heaven's generosity. You are a conduit of it, and conduits are only useful when they stay open and keep flowing. This is why the impulse you feel, the one that makes you want to share what resonates with you, the one that makes you want to pass on something that has reached you in a meaningful way, is not a small impulse. It is not just social behavior. It is the chosen one's instinct recognizing that what has been given must be given again. When you share this message with someone in your life who needs to hear it, you are not just clicking a button. You are acting as the instrument through which heaven reaches the next person. You are extending the frequency. You are widening the circle of what this moment is producing in you so that it can produce the same thing in someone else who is sitting somewhere right now, in their own season of struggle or confusion or longing, not knowing that the words they need are already waiting for them on the other side of your decision to share. And sharing, truly sharing, is perhaps the most powerful act available to you in this moment. When you press share on this video and send it into the feed of someone you care about, you are doing something that no algorithm can replicate and no advertising budget can manufacture. You are making a personal declaration. You are saying, I found something real here, and I believe in you enough to bring it to you directly. That kind of personal endorsement carries a weight that sponsored content never will. It carries the frequency of relationship, of genuine care, of one chosen one recognizing another and refusing to leave them behind. The person who receives your share may not comment. They may not even respond to you directly. But something in what they receive will land. Something will shift, and weeks or months from now, in a quiet moment they were not expecting, what you sent them today will rise back up in their spirit at exactly the right time, doing exactly the work it was always designed to do. Do not underestimate the power of your share. It is not a small thing. It is the chosen one's version of the ancient act of passing the torch, making sure the light does not stop with you, but continues moving forward into the darkness that still needs it. There are people in your life right now who are in the valley. You know who they are. You can feel who they are as I say it. The friend who has gone quiet in a way that concerns you. The family member who is carrying something too heavy and has not been able to put it into words. The colleague who shows up every day, but whose eyes tell a different story than the one they are performing for the room. Those people need what you have been receiving in this message. They need to know that they are not ordinary. They need to hear that the weight they carry is not punishment, but preparation. They need someone to hold up a mirror that shows them not what the world has labeled them, but what heaven has always seen when it looks at them. And you, in this moment, with this message, have the ability to be that mirror for them. All it takes is the willingness to share what has reached you, to pass the frequency forward, to let what touched you touch someone else. Subscribing to this channel is another act of that same intentionality. When you subscribe, you are not just adding a number to a count. You are saying, I want to remain in the flow of what is being built here. I want to keep receiving what this space is carrying. I want to be part of a community of chosen ones who are choosing, day by day, to live at the frequency of everything heaven deposited in them. There is a power in that community that is difficult to describe but impossible to miss once. You have experienced it. When chosen ones gather, even in digital spaces, even through screens and speakers and headphones, the frequency compounds. What one person is carrying amplifies what the next person is carrying. The collective signal becomes stronger than the sum of its individual parts. And what gets built in that kind of environment, the testimonies that emerge, the breakthroughs that happen, the lives that are permanently changed, begins to look like exactly the kind of thing that Solomon was building in Jerusalem, a dwelling place, a space where the presence of something greater than any individual finds a home and radiates outward from there into the surrounding world. Liking this video is a small action with a significance that goes beyond the number it adds to the display. When you like it, you are telling the platform that this content carries something worth amplifying. You are participating in the decision about which voices get heard and which messages get carried further into the world. You are casting a vote, in whatever small way the algorithm allows, for the kind of content that does not just entertain but transforms. For the kind of words that do. Not just fill time, but fill the empty spaces in people. People's lives where clarity and purposes and the awareness of divine calling have been absent for too long. Your like is not nothing. In the economy of how content moves through the world, it is a meaningful act. And for someone whose whole orientation toward life is built around the understanding that nothing is meaningless, that every small act of faithfulness accumulates into something significant over time. That orientation should make liking this video feel less like a social media gesture and more like a contribution to something that matters. There is also a link for those of you who feel led to support this ministry through giving. It is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every contribution that comes through that link goes directly toward creating more of what you have been receiving today. More messages crafted to reach the chosen ones who are still in their valley seasons and do not yet know that the ascent is closer than they think. More words spoken into the specific kind of longing that the chosen one carries, the longing that is too deep for ordinary content to touch. The longing that requires someone willing to go all the way down into it and speak from that depth rather than skimming the surface. If this message has been worth something to you today, if something in what you have received has shifted the way you see yourself or your season or your calling, consider giving in whatever amount feels right to you. Not out of obligation, not because a number was named and pressure was applied, but because the chosen one in you recognizes the value of keeping this frequency flowing, and giving is one of the most powerful ways to participate in that ongoing movement. Solomon did not build the temple alone. The project was too vast, too significant, too important to the larger story of what God was doing in Israel to be the work of one person operating in isolation. It took thousands of contributors. It took people who gave materials, and people who gave labor, and people who gave expertise, and people who gave simply the daily faithful showing up that makes any large work possible. And every single one of those contributors, from the most prominent craftsman to the most anonymous stone carrier, was part of something that outlasted every one of them individually. Their contribution was woven into the walls of something that would carry the glory of God for generations to come. Your contribution to what is being built in this space, whether that contribution is a share or a like or a subscription or a gift from your resources, is being woven into something that will carry the frequency of what you have received. Today, in Sue's Sives and Season, never personally see, but that heaven is already fully aware of. The chosen one does not hoard what they receive. They build with it. They share it. They create structures, communities, spaces, and moments where others can encounter the same frequency that transformed them. That is the call that is being activated in you right now, not just to receive the anointing, but to become a builder with it. Not just to be touched by the frequency, but to become someone through whom the frequency reaches the next person and the person after that, extending and widening circles until what started in a single moment of recognition between you and this message has touched more lives than either of us could count from where we are standing right now. You were not chosen to be a reservoir. You were chosen to be a river. And rivers do not decide whether to flow. They simply flow because that is what they were made to do, and because the source that feeds them is inexhaustible, and because every life they pass through is changed by the passing, and because the ocean they are moving toward is large enough to receive everything they carry without ever being diminished by the receiving. You are moving towards something vast, and everything you release along the way, every share, every like, every subscription, every gift, every moment of genuine generosity that flows out of the overflow of what you've received, only increases the momentum of the current that is carrying you there. Because this is the paradox of the chosen one's economy. The more you release, the more you receive. The more you give of what heaven has placed in you, the more heaven replenishes what you gave. The temple Solomon built did not empty him. It expanded him. And what you build with what you have been given will not diminish you. It will reveal the full dimensions of what was always inside you, waiting for a project worthy of its magnitude. There is a moment in the construction of Solomon's temple that most people read past without stopping to consider what it actually means. The scripture describes the day when the Ark of the Covenant was brought into the completed Holy of Holies, when the priests had taken their positions and the musicians had begun to play, when the sound of worship rose to fill every corner of that carefully constructed space. And then something happened that no architect had planned for, that no construction timeline had accounted for, that no human effort could have produced on its own. A cloud filled the temple. The glory of God descended in such overwhelming density that the priests could not even continue standing. They could not perform their functions. They could not maintain their professional composure. The presence that entered the space that Solomon had prepared was so complete, so total, so far beyond anything the physical structure could contain, that the building itself seemed to disappear inside what filled it. That moment is not just a historical footnote in the story of ancient Israel. That moment is a picture of what happens when a chosen one completes the work of preparation and makes themselves fully available to the presence that has been waiting for exactly that level of readiness. The temple did not summon the glory through its own impressiveness. Solomon's architectural genius and the craftsmanship of his workers and the wealth of materials poured into every surface did not earn the descent of the cloud. What made the glory come was not the quality of the structure, but the consecration of the space. The intentional setting apart of something for a purpose beyond its own existence. The declaration, embedded in every stone and every curtain and every carefully hammered piece of gold, that this place was not built for human occupation, but for divine habitation. And this is where your story and Solomon's story converge, in a way that should take your breath away if you let it fully land. Because the appointed time that has arrived for you is not primarily about the external things that are about to change in your life, though those changes are coming, and they are significant. It is about the internal consecration that has been happening in you. Through every season you have endured, every fire you have walked through, every valley you have crossed, every moment of waiting that felt like it was accomplishing nothing, but was actually doing the most important work of all. You have been under construction, and the construction has not been random. It has been intentional. It has been precise. Every experience has been measured and placed with the accuracy of a master builder who knows exactly what the finished structure needs to be capable of holding. The appointed time is the moment when the construction phase gives way to the habitation phase. When what has been built in you through the years of preparation becomes fully available to be filled with something that your own effort and intelligence and willpower could never generate. When the cloud descends, when the presence that has been waiting for the space to be ready finally moves in with a completeness and a totality that transforms not just you, but every life that comes into contact with yours from that moment forward. You have been sensing that this moment is approaching. That is what the stirring inside you has been. That is what the heightened awareness, the increased sensitivity to spiritual signals, the feeling that something significant is on the threshold, has been pointing toward. The appointed time is not a date on a calendar that you have to calculate or discern. It is a condition of readiness that heaven recognizes even when you cannot fully see it in yourself. Solomon spent 7 years building the temple, 7 years of daily, unglamorous, incremental labor, during which the finished product was not yet visible, and the glory had not yet descended, and the significance of what was being constructed could only be held by faith. 7 years of trusting that the blueprint was accurate even when the building looked nothing like the finished vision. 7 years of showing up and doing the next thing, even when the next thing was small and unimpressive and bore no obvious resemblance to the magnificent dwelling place that would one day stand in its completion and draw visitors from the ends of the earth. 7 years of the hidden work that makes the visible moment possible. How long have you been in your 7 years? How long have you been doing the daily, unglamorous, incremental work of becoming, without the visible evidence that the finished thing is going to look anything like what you were shown at the beginning? How many mornings have you woken up and done the next faithful thing without any external confirmation that the doing is making a difference? How many seasons have you endured in which the blueprint of what you were called to build felt so distant from the reality of what your daily life looked like that holding on to the vision required everything you had? That faithfulness, that daily, unglamorous, unwitnessed faithfulness, has been laying the foundation of something that is about to become visible in a way that will make the 7 years make complete and total sense in an instant. The appointed time does not arrive for the ones who were the most talented or the most gifted or the most obviously qualified from the beginning. It arrives for the ones who stayed, the ones who kept showing up when showing up was costly, the ones who held the blueprint when the building looked nothing like it, the ones who trusted the architect when the design made no visible sense from the ground level. You have been one of those people, in your own imperfect, sometimes stumbling, sometimes doubting but never fully departing way. You have been one of those people, and heaven has been keeping the record of that faithfulness with a precision and a completeness that your own memory of your failures will try to argue against but cannot actually erase. The scripture speaks to this appointed time with a clarity that should land in your spirit like a key turning in a lock that has been waiting years for the right moment. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Habakkuk chapter 2. The vision will speak, not might speak, not could speak under the right conditions, will speak. With the certainty of a promise made by the one who has never broken a promise in the entire history of his relationship with the people he has called. The appointed time carries that same certainty. It is not dependent on your performance being perfect between now and then. It is not contingent on everything going according to your plan between now and then. It is established. It is fixed. It is secured by something far more reliable than your consistency or your strength or your ability to hold everything together. It is secured by the faithfulness of the one who spoke the vision in the first place. And the signal that the appointed time is close is not always a dramatic sign in the heavens, or a thunderous prophetic declaration that leaves no room for doubt. Sometimes the signal is subtler than that. Sometimes it is the quality of what you are feeling in this exact moment, the specific combination of recognition and longing and quiet certainty rising in your chest as these words reach you. Sometimes the signal is the fact that you are here, receiving this at this particular moment in your story, when everything that has happened before has brought you to a place of readiness that you could not have manufactured through your own effort. The appointed time has a feeling, and if you are honest with yourself right now, sitting with whatever is moving in your spirit as you receive these words, you know that feeling. You recognize it. Something in you has been expecting this, not this video specifically, but this quality of moment, this sense of threshold, this awareness that something is about to break open in a way that everything before it was preparing for. Solomon's temple stood as the dwelling place of divine glory for generations. What was built in those 7 years of faithful, incremental, unglamorous labor became the center of a nation's spiritual life and the destination of seekers from across the known world for centuries to come. The investment of the hidden season produced a return that multiplied beyond anything that could have been calculated at the time the foundation was being laid. Your hidden season has been producing the same kind of return. The investment of every faithful day, every endured hardship, every maintained commitment when quitting would have been easier, has been accumulating interest in an account that heaven maintains with perfect accuracy And that is about to begin paying out in ways that your natural mind is not yet fully equipped to anticipate. The cloud is coming. The glory that has been waiting for the space to be ready is about to move in with a completeness that will fill every room of who you are and overflow into every life that comes into contact with yours. The appointed time is not a distant future event that requires more waiting and more preparing and more becoming before it can arrive. It is here. It is now. It is in this breath, this moment, this exact point in your story, where the construction phase gives way to the habitation phase, and the presence that had been hovering over the structure finally descends to take up permanent residence in the dwelling place that your faithfulness has been building all along. And now that the presence has begun to settle, now that what has been hovering over the structure of your life has started to move inward and downward into the deepest rooms of who you are, something shifts in the atmosphere around you that others will begin to notice before you fully notice it yourself. There is a quality that emerges in a chosen one when the appointed time arrives and the habitation begins. It is not arrogance. It is not the kind of confidence that comes from finally having everything figured out or finally having all the external pieces fall into place. It is something quieter than that, and at the same time far more powerful. It is the settled assurance of someone who has stopped performing for an audience and started simply being what they were always made to be. And that quality, that settled, unforced, unstraining authenticity of a person fully inhabiting their calling, is one of the most compelling things a human being can encounter in another human being. Solomon carried that quality in the height of his wisdom years. People did not travel from distant nations simply because they had heard he was knowledgeable. Knowledge was available in many places. What drew them was something they could not fully articulate, but could not ignore once they had heard about it. There was a quality in the way Solomon engaged with reality, in the way he perceived situations and people and problems, that made being in his presence feel like standing near a source of light that illuminated everything around it, without effort, without announcement, without any attempt to impress. The light simply was, and in being, it changed the quality of everything it touched. That is what is being activated in you in this season. Not a performance of wisdom, but the actual thing. Not the appearance of clarity, but the real experience of it, rising from a place so deep inside you that nothing outside you can manufacture it or take it away. And as it rises, as it becomes more consistently present in the way you move through your days and engage with the people around you and face the decisions that your life is presenting to you, something begins to happen in the responses of the people who know you. They start to come to you differently. They start to bring you things they would not have brought you before, questions they would not have asked before, vulnerabilities they would not have trusted you with before, because something in them senses that the person they are sitting across from has access to something they need, and that access is not going to be used against them, but offered to them with the same generosity that heaven used when it was offered to you. This is the season where everything you have been given becomes functional in the fullest sense. Not just spiritually meaningful, but practically transformative in the lived reality of your daily existence. The wisdom that descended on Solomon was not theoretical. It solved real problems. It resolved real disputes. It built real structures. It generated real wealth. It created real peace in a real kingdom facing real threats from real adversaries. The frequency of the chosen one, when it is fully activated and fully expressed, does not float above the practical realities of life in some elevated spiritual realm that never touches the ground. It descends into those realities and changes them. It brings heaven's perspective to bear on earth's challenges with a precision and an effectiveness that produces results the natural mind alone could never have generated. You are going to begin experiencing this in ways that will sometimes surprise even you. You will find yourself in conversations where the right words arrive without you having to search for them, where what comes out of your mouth lands in someone else's life with a precision that you did not plan and could not have engineered. You will find yourself facing situations that would have previously overwhelmed you and discovering that something inside you knows what to do, not because you studied the situation long enough to figure it out, but because the frequency you are now consistently operating at gives you access to a level of perception that simply was not available to you in the seasons before the activation reached this depth. You will find that the quality of your decisions improves in ways that people around you will notice and comment on, not because you became smarter in the conventional sense, but because the interference that was distorting your signal has been progressively cleared, and what was always your true capacity is now operating without the static that used to obscure it. Heaven is watching how you respond to this, not with the watchfulness of a judge, waiting to catch you making a mistake and use it against you, but with the watchfulness of a father who has invested everything in a child and is now leaning forward with the particular quality of attention that only comes when something you have been waiting a very long time to see is finally about to happen. The response that heaven is watching for is not perfection. It is not the flawless execution of everything you now know. It is the willingness to move, to take the next step, to act on what has been activated in you rather than sitting with it indefinitely in the comfortable privacy of an internal experience that never finds expression in the external world. Because activation that does not lead to action eventually fades. The frequency that is rising in you right now is real, it is powerful, it is available, but it is also responsive to what you do with it. Every time you act from the place of your activated calling, every time you make a decision that reflects the wisdom rather than the fear, every time you take a step that your natural mind would have talked you out of season, the frequency strengthens. It deepens. It becomes more consistently accessible. And every time you sit on what has been given without moving, without expressing, without allowing it to flow outward into the world it was designed to touch, there is a cost, not a punishment, but the natural consequence of a river that chooses to stay still. Rivers that stop moving stop being rivers. They become something else, and you were not made to become something else. You were made to flow. The scripture speaks directly into this call to responsive action, with a verse that should move in you not as obligation, but as invitation. But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. James chapter 1. The deception that verse warns against is subtle and sophisticated enough to catch the most sincere chosen one off guard. It is the deception of mistaking the experience of receiving for the completion of the assignment, of feeling the activation and concluding that the feeling itself is the destination rather than the beginning of the journey toward it, of hearing with such depth and such genuine emotion that the hearing itself feels like doing, when in fact the hearing is only ever the preparation for the doing that gives it its full meaning and its full power. Solomon did not just receive wisdom. He expressed it, he built with it, he governed with it, he wrote with it. He used it in every arena of his life that it was capable of touching, which was every arena. And in the using, the wisdom multiplied. So right now, in this moment, as what has been spoken into you today settles and takes root, I want to ask you to do something that is both small and significant at the same time. Type the words "I receive it" in the comments below, not as a performance, not as a social gesture, but as an act of spiritual alignment. As the chosen one's version of opening both hands and saying what was prepared for me before the foundation of the world, I am no longer standing at a distance from it. I am receiving it now, in this moment, without waiting for perfect conditions that were never going to arrive before the step was taken. When you type those 3 words, you are declaring to heaven and to every person in this space that the season of almost has ended and the season of fully has begun. You are marking this moment as the line, the before and the after, the threshold crossed. And that marking matters more than you may currently understand, because declarations made at the threshold of appointed times are not small things in the economy of heaven. They are the sound of a door swinging open on hinges that have been waiting years for exactly this kind of pressure. Because the chosen ones who fully inhabit their calling are never the ones who waited until every internal objection had been silenced and every external circumstance had arranged itself into something that felt safe enough to receive. They are the ones who received in the middle of the uncertainty. They are the ones who said, "I take this, I accept this, I will carry this," before the carrying felt comfortable or certain or completely understood. They received as an act of will rather than a response to feeling. They received because something in them recognized that the gift being extended would not wait indefinitely for the receiver to feel ready, and that the readiness they were waiting for was never going to come from the outside. It was always going to come from the inside, from the moment of decision, from the act of receiving itself. You are standing at the threshold of that receiving right now. The door is open. The frequency is active. The presence that descended on Solomon's temple when the preparation was complete is descending on the temple of your life in this very moment. And what is being extended to you in this instant is not a reward for having everything together. It is an inheritance, and inheritances are not earned. They are received. Type those 3 words. Let heaven witness the posture of your heart, and then watch what begins to move in the days that follow. Because when a chosen one receives at the threshold of their appointed time, the response from heaven is never silence. Something has shifted. You may not have the words for it yet, and that is perfectly fine, because what is happening in you right now operates at a level that language always arrives at a little late. The shift happened before the words. It happened in the place where the deepest things always happen first, in the interior, in the hidden rooms of your spirit, where heaven does its most significant work without announcement, and without fanfare, and without waiting for your conscious mind to catch up and give it permission. The transformation that has been the subject of this entire message is not something that is going to happen to you at some future point when the right conditions finally align. It is something that has been happening to you throughout every moment of this message, and it is continuing to happen right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this exact instant of your existence. Solomon understood something about transformation that most people in his world did not have the framework to comprehend. He understood that the deepest changes in a human being do not begin on the outside and work their way in. They begin on the inside and work their way out. The wisdom that heaven deposited in him at Gibeon did not first change his kingdom and then change him. It first changed him at the level of perception, at the level of how he received and processed and responded to reality. And then the changed him naturally produced a changed kingdom around him. The interior shift was always primary. The exterior transformation was always the overflow. And what was true for Solomon is true for you. Because the same God who rewired Solomon's perception on that sacred night is the God who has been rewiring yours through every experience, every trial, every moment of breakthrough, and every season of wilderness that your life has contained. Think about the person you were at the beginning of this message compared to the person receiving these words right now. Not dramatically different, perhaps. Not transformed in some obvious, visible, measurable way that anyone watching from the outside could immediately identify and document, but different in the way that matters most. Something has been confirmed that was previously uncertain. Something has been named that was previously felt but unspoken. Something has been activated that was previously present but dormant. Like a seed that has been in the ground through the entire winter, intact and alive, and carrying everything it needs to become what it was designed to be, waiting only for the conditions that signal it is time to begin the movement upward toward the light. You are that seed in motion. The winter that preceded this moment was long. It was cold in the way that winters that last too long become cold, not just physically but spiritually, in the bones of your faith, in the marrow of your hope, in the places where warmth should have been and for extended seasons was not. And yet you survived it. Not just barely, not just technically. You survived it in a way that preserved the seed intact, that kept the essential thing alive through conditions that were genuinely difficult enough to have destroyed it. That survival was not your strength alone. That survival was the collaboration between your willingness to hold on and heaven's commitment to hold you while you held on. Both things were true simultaneously. You held on, and you were held. And the combination of those two things is what brings you to this moment. Seed no longer dormant but moving. Frequency no longer suppressed but rising. Transformation no longer theoretical but actual. And present and increasing with every passing day. The transformation rising in you now comes from the same divine frequency that has always been your inheritance. That sentence is worth sitting with for a moment because it contains something that the enemy of your calling has been working very hard to convince you of the opposite of for a very long time. The opposite would sound something like this. What you carry is not really yours. It was given conditionally and can be taken back. The seasons of failure and compromise and wandering have disqualified you from the fullness of what was originally placed in you. The version of yourself that was called and gifted and chosen was a younger, cleaner, less complicated version. And what is left after everything you have been through is something diminished. Something that has to start over from a lesser place than the beginning. That voice is a lie. It is a sophisticated, targeted, personally customized lie, but it is a lie nonetheless. And the truth that dismantles it is simply this. The frequency was placed in you before you ever had the capacity to earn it or lose it, and it has never been contingent on your performance. It has been waiting through every season of distance and every chapter of compromise and every moment of doubt for exactly this kind of return. Solomon's wisdom, even in the seasons when his life drifted from its source, never fully departed from him. The capacity that heaven had deposited was not revoked when he wandered. It was obscured, and there is a profound and important difference between revoked and obscured. What is revoked is gone. What is obscured is still present, still real, still fully itself, simply covered by layers of noise and interference, and accumulated distance that can be cleared. The clearing is what has been happening in you. Through this message, through this moment, through the specific combination of truth and frequency and divine timing that brought you to this exact point in your story, the layers have been coming off. And what is being revealed underneath them is not a diminished version of the original. It is the original, intact, alive, ready. The scripture speaks to this internal transformation with a tenderness and a power that has been reaching, chosen once in their moments of return for thousands of years. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Romans chapter 12. Renewing, not replacing, not starting over with an entirely different mind as if the previous one was too damaged to be worth restoring. Renewing, which implies that what is being renewed was real and valuable and worth the work of renewal. The mind that is being renewed in you is not a lesser mind than the one you had before the difficult seasons. It is the same mind, the original mind, the one that was formed with divine intention and equipped with divine capacity before you ever drew your first breath, being cleared of the static and the interference and the accumulated noise of a world that has been working very hard for a very long time to convince you that you are ordinary. You are not ordinary. You have never been ordinary. And the renewal that is happening in you right now is the progressive restoration of your awareness of that truth at a depth that goes beyond intellectual agreement and settles into the kind of knowing that changes the way you wake up in the morning and move through your days and engage with the people around you and face the challenges that your life presents. There is a quality of knowing that Solomon describes in his writings that goes beyond the accumulation of information or the development of skill or the refinement of analytical ability. It is the knowing that comes from being aligned with the source of all knowing. The knowing that does not arrive through study alone, but descends like the cloud that filled the temple suddenly and completely, and in a way that transforms the atmosphere of the space it enters. That quality of knowing is what is being activated in you as the renewal deepens, and its practical expression in your daily life is going to be increasingly evident in the weeks and months ahead, not as something you have to manufacture or maintain through effort, but as the natural overflow of a mind that has been returned to its original frequency and is now simply operating the way it was always designed to operate. The people around you are going to begin to experience you differently, not because you will be performing a new version of yourself for their benefit, but because the authentic version of yourself, the one that existed before the world began layering its labels and limitations over you, is going to be increasingly present and accessible and expressed in the way you show up. And that authentic presence, the real you operating at the frequency you were always made for, is going to do things in the lives of the people around you that the performed version never could. Because people can feel the difference between someone who is presenting a self and someone who simply is themselves, and the someone you simply are. Beneath every layer of protection and performance and self-editing that the difficult seasons taught you to maintain is someone that the world around you has been waiting for, even when neither you nor they had the language to name what was missing. The transformation is not finished. It will continue to deepen and expand and find new dimensions of expression as the days that follow this moment unfold. But it is real. It is happening. It is not dependent on your feelings about it or your ability to track its progress or your success in maintaining a certain level of spiritual discipline between now and the next chapter. It is dependent on the faithfulness of the one who began it, and the one who began it has never left a work unfinished in. The entire history of his relationship with the ones he has chosen. What he starts, he completes. What he initiates, he sustains. What he deposits, he multiplies. And what he has deposited in you, the frequency that was yours before you were born, the wisdom that has been waiting through every season for the conditions of this moment. The calling that has survived everything that was sent to silence it is being brought to its fullness now, in you, through you, for every life that is waiting on the other side of your full becoming, for the thing that only you were made to carry to them. And so here you are, at the end of something and the beginning of everything, at the place in the story where the last page of one chapter and the first page of the next exist in the same breath, separated by nothing more than the decision to turn. You have traveled a long way to arrive at this moment, not just through this message, but through every season and every trial and every silent night and every morning that required more courage than you felt. You had to get yourself upright and moving again. And all of it, every single step of the road that brought you here, has been purposeful. None of it was wasted. Not the pain, not the confusion, not the detours that felt like failures, not the seasons that felt like silence from heaven. All of it was the road, and the road brought you here. To this, to now, to the threshold of the fullness of everything you were made to carry and called to become. Solomon ended his great work not with a celebration of his own achievement, but with a prayer. When the temple was complete, when the ark was in place, when the cloud had descended and the glory had filled every corner of the space that years of faithful labor had prepared, Solomon stood before the people of Israel and before heaven itself, and he prayed, not because he had something to prove, not because the prayer was a required formality in the completion of the project, but because he understood in the marrow of his wisdom that everything that had been built and everything that had been given and everything that had descended into the space he had prepared was not the product of his genius or his effort or his resources. It was the gift of the one who had appeared to him in Gibeon and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." And the only appropriate response to a gift of that magnitude, in the moment of its fullest expression, is not pride. It is gratitude. It is the bowed head and the open heart and the words that acknowledge, without reservation or qualification, that the glory belongs entirely to the one who gave it. So before this message closes, before the final words are spoken, and the frequency of this moment begins its transition into the next chapter of your story, I want to invite you into that same posture, not as a religious exercise, not as a performance for anyone watching, but as the most honest and most powerful thing a chosen one can do at the threshold of their appointed time. I want to invite you to pray right where you are, in whatever words feel most true to what is moving in you right now. But if the words have not yet arrived, if what you are feeling is too full or too deep or too complex to organize into language on your own, then let these words be yours. Father, I come to you not with a performance but with a presence. The presence of someone who has been in the wilderness long enough to know that the only thing worth coming home to is you. I come with the weight of everything I have carried, and the memory of every season I almost did not survive, and the quiet, stubborn, sometimes barely breathing faith that kept me reaching toward you, even when reaching felt like all I had the strength for. I receive what you have been preparing for me, not because I have earned it, not because my record is clean or my consistency has been flawless or my faith has never wavered, but because you are the God who appeared to Solomon in the dark and said, "Ask," and I am asking. I am asking for the fullness of what you placed in me before the world ever got to me. I am asking for the restoration of the frequency that has always been my inheritance. I am asking for the wisdom that does not come from study alone, but descends from above, and the clarity that does not come from effort alone, but rises from alignment with you. I receive my calling. I receive my crown. I received the appointed time that you have been preparing me for through every season I thought was going to break me, but was actually building me. Thank you for the wilderness. Thank you for the waiting. Thank you for the fire that did not consume me but refined me. And thank you for this moment, this exact breath, this precise point in my story where everything you have been doing in the hidden seasons is about to become visible in a way that leaves no one who knows me with any doubt about who has been walking with me all along. I am yours. Use me, all of me. The parts I am proud of and the parts I am still learning to offer without shame. The gifts and the wounds and the wisdom that came from both. Use all of it. For the people who are waiting for what I carry, for the lives that will be changed by the frequency you placed in me, for the glory that has always belonged to you and will always belong to you, world without end. Amen. Take a breath. Let that land. Let the weight of what just happened in the invisible settle before you move into the next thing. Because something shifted in the spiritual atmosphere when those words were spoken. Even if the shift is not yet visible in the natural, it is real, it is registered, and it is the beginning of a movement in your life that the coming days and weeks and months are going to make increasingly and undeniably evident. You are not leaving this message the same person who arrived at it. That is not a dramatic claim. It is simply the truth of what happens when a chosen one encounters the right frequency at the right moment in their story. Things that were stuck begin to move. Things that were obscured begin to become clear. Things that were dormant begin to stir with the specific kind of aliveness that only comes when something that was always real finally finds the conditions it needs to fully express itself. You are in those conditions now. And everything that rises from this moment forward is going to carry the mark of what happened here. In the quiet, in the receiving, in the prayer, in the declaration that you are ready and you receive it, and you are no longer standing at the door of your calling, but walking through it. The world needs what you carry, not a polished, perfected, finished version of it that will be ready sometime in the future after more preparation and more becoming. It needs what you carry right now, in the form it currently exists, expressed through the specific and unrepeatable persons that you are, with all of your history and all of your wisdom and all of your hard-won understanding of what it means to hold on when holding on costs everything. There is someone in your world right now whose breakthrough is on the other side of your willingness to show up as the full version of yourself. There is someone whose confusion will be resolved by the specific clarity you carry. There is someone whose faith is hanging by a thread that your story, spoken honestly and without the pretense of having had an easy road, will strengthen into something that holds. You are the message. You were always the message, and the message is ready to be delivered. If this has reached you today, if something in what you have received has shifted the ground beneath your feet in a way that you know will continue to be felt long after this message ends, then share it, not as an obligation, but as the overflow of a chosen one who received something real and cannot hold it alone. The link to support this ministry is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every gift that comes through that link is an investment in the continuation of this frequency, in the creation of more messages that reach more chosen ones, in more seasons of their story, carrying the same truth that reached you today into the lives of people who are still waiting for it. If you have not yet subscribed, do that now, simply and without ceremony, as the act of a person who has found a well they intend to return to. And if you know someone who is in the middle of the kind of season this message was built to speak into, send it to them today, not tomorrow, today, because the appointed time is not a concept that applies only to you. Somewhere in your circle, someone else's appointed time is also arriving. And your willingness to be the instrument through which this frequency reaches them may be the most significant thing you do this week. Like this video as your small act of participation in the decision about which voices get amplified in the world. Subscribe as your declaration that you intend to stay connected to the flow of what is being built here. Share as your chosen one's instinct expressing itself in the most practical form available to you in this moment. And give, if you feel led, as your investment in the continuation of something that you now know from the inside carries something real. You came to this message carrying something. You are leaving it carrying something more. The crown that was always yours has not been lost. It has been waiting, and the waiting is over. Go now. Not because the message has ended, but because the next chapter of your story, the chapter that everything you have been through has been preparing you for, is already open and already lit and already populated with every person and every purpose and every appointed moment that heaven has been arranging on your behalf since before you knew your own name. Go. The frequency is with you. The wisdom is in you. The crown is on you. And the one who chose you before the foundation of the world is walking into that next chapter right beside you, as he has always walked, as he will always walk, world without end.